Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live segment with WKCTC. My name is Stacy Watson, and I currently teach African American history and world civilization here at WKCTC. I will be your moderator for this oral history panel discussion, Oral History, Stories of the Community. If you are a new or current WKCTC student, a prospective student, family member, or a member of the community who has questions, we would love to see your comments in the live chat. Ask a question in today's live video, and you could win one of two $50 gift cards from Walmart. We will announce two winners at the end of our segment, so please stay tuned. Before I introduce our panelists, I want to emphasize the connection of our one book read book, The Gone Dead by Chanel Benz, to the tradition of oral history in the African American community. When Africans were transported to the Americas, they were stripped of most of their native heritage and forbidden to practice anything that resembled their native identity. Most enslaved persons were also forbidden to learn how to read or write. In order to not lose their identity, the story of their lives and ancestors were shared amongst family and the community. Oral history became a way for enslaved persons to teach others, as well as to keep the tradition going. We have the younger generation can learn about their history as well. So today I want to make sure that we introduce and keep that tradition going and expose the community to oral history. Our panelists will discuss personal experiences that were inspired by events from our book this evening, The Gone Dead. I am super excited and I'm so glad that you can join us. And when we get started, I want to go ahead and just introduce our panelists for our event tonight. So let's go ahead and get started. I would like to go ahead and introduce, just to remind you, for our viewers, we are live, it's not pre-recorded, and you can start typing in your questions right now. So let us start with Ms. Dobson. Please tell us where you are from.
Hi, I am from Eddyville, Kentucky, and I work with the Hotel Metropolitan Project.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us.
And I'd like to go ahead and,
oh, absolutely. I would like to go ahead and introduce the rest of our panel. Nathan Lynn.
Hi, I'm Nathan Lynn, and I work at the McCracken County Public Library in Paducah, Kentucky.
Thank you. Miss Veretta Hurt.
I'm Veretta Hurt. I'm a retired educator, taught over 40 years in the Paducah school system, and originally from Tennessee.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us. J.W. Cleary. He might have some trouble logging in, not a problem. Samuel Hawkins.
Like Ms. Watson said, I'm Samuel Hawkins. I'm an author and a developmental editor for New Degree Press.
Perfect. And Miss Mary Hammond.
Hello, I'm Mary Hammond. I'm Executive Director of the Paducah Convention and Visitors Bureau. I'm not from Paducah. I was a military brat, born in Newfoundland, and did most of my growing up in Okinawa. My family settled in Paducah because we found here a hometown we never had and made ourselves members of the community.
Perfect. Well, thank you for bringing everything with you to Paducah. We're glad to have you here. I'm not a native from Paducah either. I'm actually from Southfield, Michigan. So I appreciate being part of the community as well. And we're going to work on JW coming in. He's going to introduce himself. So for you viewers at home, you might see a new face. He is going to pop in and let us know where he's from. Hello, there he is, JW Cleary. How are you? And he might not be able to hear us, but that's okay. So if he comes in, I'm sure I'll go ahead and bring him right on in and he'll introduce himself. So let's go ahead and get started as we talk about oral history and the importance of how it works. I'm so happy that we can create history at this moment. I do want to go ahead and just dive right into the book and have us start with Miss Betty Dobson. Now, Miss Dobson, in the book, we learned that the main character, Billy, discovered a wealth of information about her family's history. Like Billy, what do you think drives us to know our family history, and how does not knowing one's history affect an individual's identity?
Wow. Well, I believe, like Billy, that it's always important to know your family. We all have family secrets, or we might want to know how to make that special chocolate cake, or you might look in the mirror one day and wonder, why do I have ears that look like that? Or why do my lips look the way they do? It's because of family. And so, wanting to know what those people that look like before you, those great grandmothers and grandfathers, and, having that story, or having that family uh, contact, keeps you growing. It makes you the person you're supposed to be. And I think if you don't have that direction, then history might not be kind. People may do things that they may not would have done had they known their history. So I
Absolutely.
just think it's important.
Absolutely. Well, it lends so much to us when we do get a chance to discover so many parts of who we are and help shape our identity. I think that's great that, you talk about chocolate cake and learning those special recipes, and, where do you get that from and how you're taught and how that shapes who you are. So I
Hmm.
appreciate you, mentioning the importance of family and identity. Now, Mrs. Hurt, I want to go to you. You just mentioned that you were from Tennessee,
Yes.
and I know that's down south a little bit. And when we talk about Tennessee and the experiences that you might have had in Tennessee, what is a personal experience for you that has impacted you where you just can't seem to forget it?
Good evening, and thank you for having me on this panel.
Absolutely.
That's a pretty good question. I believe we are, as Mrs. Dobson said, we are a product of our experiences. And this particular incident that I'm going to share with you, I've shared with classes over the years, and it is one that I need to lay to rest probably, but I think it's made me the person that I am, and it's helped um, other people as well. And my experience came from when I was in high school, and I believe I was probably in the 11th grade, and come from a segregated school, and it was during the time of desegregation. So they were trying to integrate the white school, but they did it by taking only 2 grades from the from the black school. So they took the 11th graders and they took the 12th graders, and in essence it left us a school of grades 1 through 10. So we were pretty well ineffective in most activities. We didn't get to do a lot, but one thing that we did continue was an honor roll society. So we continued with the honor roll society, but no basketball teams, no football teams, nothing like that. But we had the honor roll society because we did care a lot about education, and our parents were, very interested in keeping that going. And the year I went to the next year when I was a junior and I went to the white school, I can remember that they had a beta club. We were all my friends and myself, we were looking for that honor club, looking for, different activities that we could join and become a part of the school. And they didn't have the honor roll society, they had the beta club, which is pretty much the same. So my friends and I, we ran to sign up. And I'll never forget that the lady who was in charge would not let us sign up. She told us in essence that we hadn't been taught the way that they were taught at the white school, and that if she placed us in the beta club, that we would only come out at the end of the semester because we would not have the grade. And we protested. We said, hey, we're smart, we love school, we do our work, but that was that was the end of it. So at the end of the semester, all of us had the grade, but I think I was the only one who decided I still wanted to be in that beta club because they had a trip. They took a trip every year, and I wanted to take that trip. I wanted to get out of school for a few days and take that trip. So, you paid your fee and got on the bus, and I don't remember anything of major essence going on during the trip. And when we got there, it was at least a 2 to 3 hour trip. When we got there and we're getting ready to check into the hotel, I remember the lady calling off the different names, the sponsor calling off the different names, and everybody just, woo, 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 taking the key and running. And finally, it was just me standing there. And she looked at me and she said, "Veretta, I don't know what I'm going to do with you."
Mm.
And I stayed in the hotel in her room and slept probably 4 or 5 nights on a cot. That stayed with me. And when I started teaching and I became cheerleader sponsor, I wanted to make certain that and we went to camp every year. I wanted to make certain that no child experienced the embarrassment, the feelings that I had felt. So I would assign the rooms, and I made certain if you lived on South Side, your roommate was not going to live on South Side. Your roommate was going to live on West End. Or if you lived on the North Side, you weren't getting your friend that you had several overnights with. You were going to get somebody that you didn't know and that you weren't familiar with. And it worked. I was a cheerleader sponsor for probably at least 20, 25 years. And I only had one parent to ever complain about my method of assigning the rooms. And even then, after I explained it, he pretty much agreed and there were no changes made.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. I mean, that is something that you just will always stay with you. I know you said you want to lay it to rest, but I'm glad you shared it before you decided to do that, because that is something that would always stick with you, of course. It looks like we have some community questions here, and I just want to go ahead and take those before we continue to go into our discussion. So, Tammy, can you let us know about the community questions? Hi, Tammy.
Hi, I'm Tammy Thompson. I work in the marketing office, and I'm part of the One Book Read Committee. And we don't really have any questions, but I just wanted to share with the panel that we have some people watching from far away.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we have Wkctc Miller from Atlanta, Georgia. She's watching. And then we also—
Hello, Wkctc.
Yes.
Hello.
And I believe we have, let's see, where was the other person that we had? They're coming in very, very quickly.
Okay.
And we had one from Atlanta, Georgia. Well, no, that's Atlanta, Georgia. Hold on, let me go on up. Sorry. Birmingham, Alabama.
All right.
So
hello there, LaToya Bishop. How are you this evening? Greetings.
So we have lots of people watching, and they're making comments such as, great conversation, and, really excited about the panel and really appreciating this discussion. But I just wanted to share those two because they're watching from far away. So I appreciate that, and I will come back if we have any more specific questions.
Thank you so much. All right, so let's go ahead and dig in. I know that's a hard story to follow, but I want to shift to you, Ms. Hammond. I know you work over at the Paducah Visitors Bureau, and I am sure you interact with a lot of people sharing their experiences. I'm sure you come across people who like to talk about what they expect to see when they come to Paducah. They're looking to create all types of memories. So I just want to ask, what experiences or what type of memories are you helping to create for the Black community when people are coming to Paducah?
Well, I think my answer is influenced by the library program last night, the role of the steamboat in the Underground Railroad, and the communications I've had this week with the American Queen Steamboat Company. The history of steamboating and Paducah go hand in hand. Passengers still enjoy those scenic views and the history that accompanies each bend of the river, as well as the regional foods and the authentic music that are at the core of the culture of our community. Paducah Visitors Bureau offers ways to experience that cultural heritage. The Hotel Metropolitan was voted a favorite stop by the American Queen passengers. The story of segregation told by Miss Maggie, our own Betty Dobson, is personal. It's full of personalities, a story not commonly told. We take for granted the truly authentic experience of hospitality proffered through a seat at the table, a tall glass of iced tea, a piece of homemade pie, while listening to a song by an African-American musician, or the story of an athlete who was once a guest at the hotel. But we also do things like working with Paducah native Brent Leggs, Executive Director of an African-American Cultural Heritage Action Fund at the National Trust. That is a mouthful. Brent was the February speaker at the virtual Paducah Chamber Breakfast last week, where he shared strategies for preserving Paducah's African-American cultural heritage. And he has said he would work with us more closely to flesh out that strategy. And it is a priority for the city, the chamber, and the CVB. But I think our shining star right now has been the Hotel Metropolitan. And it's had visitors from around the globe. I'm always surprised. I think the Australian visitors have always found it to be most popular with them. But the 8th of August is also a homecoming. It brings people from across the country back to Paducah. And I know with that pent-up demand of people who want to travel, that this year's 8th of August will be especially big and full of love of people returning to Paducah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Looks like we have another community question. Before we get to that question, I just wanted to ask a couple of things here. Ms. Betty Dobson, you are running Hotel Metropolitan, and can you just share what the Hotel Metropolitan is for our viewers that do not know why it's such a gem?
Well, and thank you for the shout out, Mary.
Absolutely.
Well, the Hotel Metropolitan is a restored, segregated era hotel that tells the story of the famous African-American travelers that stayed at the hotel and the history of the community. And so we do our best to tell that story and include others. We have Red Velvet that is a singer and performs as not Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald. Actually, excuse me, she performs as herself, Red Velvet. we just gave her title. And then we occasionally have a gentleman that will come in and portray Ray Charles. My son helps. I drag people off the street to come in and help. So, but the hotel is a community project, and it's there for the community. We open by appointment, and we try to offer Black history, and we do every month.
Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and go to our community questions.
All right, Stacy, we also have some more people. We got some people from Pennsylvania, people from Nashville, people from all over watching, Maryland. We're so excited. This is so great. But we have some comments from Charles Golden. The experiences of our childhood through adulthood, if we're fortunate enough to see our adult years, shape our worldview so much. And he said, how do we as hyperpolarized America remember that through our lived experiences are our truths or lies, those experiences are only part of the whole story. Maybe for anyone that you would like to speak to that, Stacy.
Sure. Can I just have JW, you're in here now. Can you please introduce yourself to our viewers at home who have no idea who you may be? Oh, we can't hear you.
Yep. And we have some more questions after this too, Stacy.
Okay, no problem.
My name is J.W. Cleary. I'm the president of Paducah branch of NAACP. I am retired. I used to work at the United States Enrichment plant here in Paducah, Kentucky. But I'm glad to be a part of it. I'm just sorry about the technical difficulty that I had there from the start.
No problem. Thank you for joining us, and we're glad to have you a part of our panel. Let's go ahead and go back to the question brought in from Charles Golden. Can you repost that for us, Tammy?
How do we as hyperpolarized America remember that through our lived experiences are our truths or lies? Those experiences are only part of the whole story.
Anybody want to answer that one? All right, Samuel.
I think it shows the importance of listening and also asking questions to gain understanding of what other people live, so you're not just leaning on your own perspective, or you get caught in your a vacuum of what you just heard your whole life. So I think being outside our comfort zone, like Ms. Hurt did with the cheerleadership trips, is to get people outside of their bubble so they can actually hear the experience of somebody else. So when they're introduced to it later in life, it's not a shock to the system or like seen as impossible because you haven't seen it ever. So I think just listening and having conversations like this.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. I think that the question, the answer is probably easier. It's easy, but it's hard for people to do, to treat one another like they want to be treated, to have, give everyone the same opportunities, to make certain that you don't have those types of activities that I explained, that you treat a person the way you want to be treated. And then that would take care of everything else. But if you are going to, and you can be, when you say polarized, you can be different. I don't know if you're so polarized, but you can be different. You embrace, you know, we used to say tolerate the differences. No, you don't tolerate the differences. You embrace the differences.
Yes.
Nobody wants a salad with just lettuce on it. Nobody wants different. It's easy, but you know, people decide they want to do things their way, and they don't think about the perspective of other people.
Thank you.
True.
Tammy, you said you had another question from the community?
We have so many in the comments and in the just of how much you appreciate this and comments thanking all of you for sharing your experiences. They are very grateful. You know, we have someone again from California, but a question I have from Angela, let's see. Angela says, Mary, did you learn anything about Paducah from Mr. Lee? But then she says, Mr. Legs. So, anything new about Paducah from Mr. Legs? Anything new?
Most certainly, and I'm embarrassed that I can't pull up the name of the schools. They were some of the earliest schools. There's one in McCracken County, and it's one of the few remaining early schools. Rosenwald schools, yes. I have much to learn. He took us to a different level, and because his knowledge is so deep, and I really look forward to his help. And looking at our inventory of historic sites and making sure we continue to have those sites to tell the history for the future.
Perfect.
Wall School.
I'm sorry, Ms. Hurt?
I attended a Rosenwald school.
Wow.
Grades 1 through 10.
Wow.
We need to get some oral history on that one.
Yes, we need to get the community together that all attended the Rosenwald schools and share their experiences as well.
That's a good reunion, yes.
Tammy, did you have another question that we could take from the community?
Just that after the evening, when you all can go back and look, we have good evening from Detroit, Michigan, Georgia here, California here. So, Maryland, all over are watching, Pittsburgh. So, I mean, this is really exciting, and they all have wonderful comments about how they appreciate all that you're sharing.
Thank you so much.
That's all we have right now, and I will come back if we have any more.
Perfect. Well, Samuel Hawkins, I know that you just spoke about, being hyperpolarized and how to maintain your identity and keeping those stories, to us and making sure that we can stay, within our own culture as well as not being exploited. So when we do this, I want to bring this to the younger generation. When we come into this panel, I know we have a diverse panel, but with you being one of our younger panelists, Samuel, how has oral history played an important role in your life? What story can you recall learning from your family that shapes your perspective?
Well, yeah, thanks for having me on here as a young panelist to give that perspective. But actually, this story, it came from my grandmother, but it did not come by me asking or even just a conversation. It's kind of crazy how it came about. I had a roommate that was actually enrolled in classes at Wkctc, and he, for one of his courses, he had to interview somebody, and he chose to interview my grandmother. And I sat in on the interview, and I'm not gonna lie, back then I had a perspective like I probably know pretty much, anything, or I'm not gonna be super surprised by anything she shared. But yeah, when she got talking about the 20-minute mark of the interview, I'm over here like just as engaged as he is, like I'm learning too. But the story she shared was she went to go facilitate workshops. Is at South Carolina actually, and she talked about how when they got to to South Carolina, about a Klan rally that was going on, and just the fear that she felt when they were all in the van, and even getting out the next day to go facilitate the workshops. And while on this interview, she was talking about it casually, but I remember just her sharing it, just put it in perspective for me, because I mean, I've been on college campuses to speak and different things like that, and that's the last thing I'm worried about. I'm just trying to make sure I got my act straight so I can go up there and perform. But I mean, to have to go to an event like that and have that type of opposition, I mean, that put it in perspective for me. But to answer your question, you carry that with you, and not only to be grateful for those that sacrifice before you, but also to move forward unapologetically, and knowing that it could be, not worse, but you could be facing a lot more opposition than just self-doubt, things like that. And when you have that type of history behind you of people that persevered, you can do anything. But when you don't have that information, people sharing those stories, you don't have anything to put in perspective like that for you. And the only way to gain that, which I realize, is sitting down and asking more questions and taking the time to actually listen. And that's another part. It just inspired me just to listen more, ask more questions, and listen.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that. I mean, that is definitely a story to hear, from, your elders about.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, the Klan is something that will definitely stick with you, and learning how to navigate seeing that as you, go to and from, and that's just a lot to deal with. So I'm pretty sure hearing that was a lot. And for the first time, you experiencing that, like, whoa, Grandma.
I know. I was like, I know you did all that.
Yeah, right. All right. So, Nathan, I want to talk to you. I know that you work at the McCracken County Library, and you work a lot in oral history and genealogy. Please share with the community in your role about Black history and how you acquire information, oral history, how you help members of the community when they are learning about African American heritage.
Sure. Thank you all for letting me be here. I'm humbled to be here with friends this evening. And I think playing off what Samuel said about listening is the key, and asking questions. And the McCracken County Library strives to be a place where folks can come and do research, and we can try to provide access, or we can ask questions and try to find someone who might have access to information that people are looking for. I've learned so much at the library, but a lot of what patrons are looking for is local, personalized information. And I tell people, your genealogy is your genealogy. It's your story. And going out and finding that, both for patrons and for me as a archivist, so I can provide that information, is a big part of my job. Not just helping people with their research, but going out and trying to find either paper documents or oral histories that we can provide access to for people to do research. And it's not always easy. Sometimes it's really easy to find those things that we might house in the library already. Other times, I might be on the phone calling people, excuse me, and trying to find answers for things that people are researching.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. It looks like we have another community question, but before we go to that particular question, I just want to say, for those of you just now tuning in, welcome to our oral history panel discussion, oral history stories from the community. We are discussing personal experiences of the local community. We are inspired by the book, The Gone Dead by Chanel Benz. So if you get a chance, make sure that you get a copy. If you are participating, you are eligible to win one of our $50 Walmart gift cards by asking a question in today's live video. And I just want to go ahead and dig back into the book shortly. And we have a question coming from the community, and I think this will be a great question here.
Yes, it is for the entire panel. Is this the first time you've seen the county react in a way it did with the murders of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor?
So that's a great question. So for the panel, first time you've seen the country react. Is this the first time you've seen the country react in response to the murders of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor? Is this the first time you've seen this type of response?
Stacy.
Yes.
Let me go back on that other question that Hawkins was talking about. Let me at least mention that the fact that sometimes people wonder, why do I do what I do? I never will forget, back in 1968, it was April the 4th. And of course, most of you should know exactly what that date is. But the very next day that Dr. King got assassinated, my dad came home, and I was only 13 years old. He came home, was talking about how the white Americans, he was one of the first African Americans to work at one of the plants in Calvert City. And he came home, was talking about that the white Americans was actually having a celebration that Dr. King had got assassinated. And I just didn't realize at 13 that there was that much hatred in the world. I knew that it was some tough situation, but to actually, regardless whether they're white or black, to be celebrating about a person getting killed, that was probably the turning point of my life. And of course, right after while I was really in high school and also went off to college, I got involved into the local civil rights movement here in Paducah. I mean, that's the reason why I tell people all the time that I actually ride on the shoulders some of the older generations, and it's so many of them that I didn't want to get into the name calling, but it was the fact that was when I got involved with the NAACP, and of course in 1990 is when I got involved. 4 or 5 years before that, in 1990, they asked me if I would be the president, and I did. But that's the kind of situation that the fact that it seems like it's always work to be done. But then when you think about the question that they just put out, I have never in my history of lifetime, I've always took the attitude that it's no way that we could survive. One of the biggest myths in the world is the fact that the NAACP was a black organization. Well, it was 60 people, and out of that 60 people, it was 60 or 53 of them that was white Americans that helped start the NAACP. So I've always had the philosophy that the sky is the limit if we as African Americans and white Americans work close together. But this year, that what we've seen after the George Floyd situation, and of course, to me, it goes all the way back to Trayvon Martin. But we have never seen any situation where it was as many white Americans out there in the streets as it was African Americans. It's always been African Americans, and the white Americans never really cared. But this year it was special, and that's my 2 cents about the situation.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing. That is, wow, that brings us to a question dealing with a historical pivotal time in our lives. And I know that you went back to address Dr. Martin Luther King's assassination. And I know that has, I can only imagine being around at this time and experiencing such a trying time and what the world was like. And, when you compare that, can you compare that to the way the country responded? Was it similar to that, or, for George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery?
That was the part that I was getting at, is the fact that we've never seen white Americans come out and protest with us when we knew all along that things wasn't been done right. It's just the fact that what tended to happen is the fact that we never did see it on tape. But with these new cell phones, this new technology, we get to see everything that goes on. All this stuff that we see now, it actually happened years ago, and probably much more worse. It was much worse. But now, and that's the only reason why that the fact that the situation for is when you think about all the stuff that happened on the Pettus Bridge. In other words, the fact that it was the American people that actually seen what was happening. So that's what happened this past time. It was young folks out there in the streets. So that's the reason why that we need each other more than ever now, than whatever.
Okay. Tammy, did you have another question from the community?
Yes,
okay.
I have a question from Beverly Barrett. She says, how can we encourage young people to listen to these stories and understand the importance? I know I often did not really listen to the stories of the older generation, and now they're lost.
Ms. Veretta Hurt, you're on mute.
Am I still on mute?
We can hear you now.
Okay. I believe we have to be more like the Jewish people, and we start to teach our kids at an early age. We sit them down, and instead of buying Xboxes and all the other things that they use, we tell them about their history. We tell them what has happened. They do not want to hear any more than, I think it makes them very uncomfortable. But you have to tell them the bad, the ugly, and the good. And they have to know that it was awful. They have to know what we've gone through. They have to know that people died, and that the rights that they have now, they have only because of the deaths of the ones who came before them. They have to know this, that we have to teach them, and it's time for us to teach them. And I agree with JW. We saw it. The world, not only did the United States see a person deliberately place their knee on a man's neck, the whole country saw it. The whole world saw it. What started out as something that's gone on in the United States forever, since the beginning of the United States, the world saw it. And not only did white Americans take over, but we have whites all over the world to go ahead and say, hey, Black Lives Matter, because it's not just happening in this country, it's happening all over. And you have people who actually took the forefront to say, hey, we don't agree with it. And that's what bothers me, is that we have white silence. And in white silence, it's condoning everything that goes on if you don't speak out.
Thank you so much.
We do have another question from, let me make sure. Allison Smith, how do you see Paducah coming together and moving forward towards greater racial equality? What are the next steps?
I think the start is I've been here over 60 years, and I've never seen the county step up on any issue, more or less, here in Paducah. It was always Paducah, Kentucky, and then the county. So this last situation about the flag, I hate that those flags are out there, those Confederate flags, but at least the county took the attitude, because the uniqueness of it is the fact that the flags are on private property, and it's hard to do whatever. You can do almost whatever you want to on private property, but I don't agree with that. But that's the way supposedly the rules are written on it. But one thing about it is the fact that it takes us all working together to make a difference. The county come up with a situation about the handshake. In other words, that the fact that this community is not a racial community, but we really have to work together. And so I think that maybe the future is the fact that it is looking a little bit better here in Paducah, but we still got a bunch of work to do. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And I hate that we only have about 15 minutes left, so I do want to go ahead and move forward with our panel discussion, and speaking about The Gone Dead, the book by Chanel Benz, which is bringing us all together today. And like I said earlier, if you're just now tuning in, we'd like to welcome you to our oral history panel discussion, oral history stories from the community. And once again, we are discussing personal experiences from our local community members. Thank you so much for tuning in. And thank you, viewers, who are also tuning in and asking questions, because you are eligible to win one of our $50 Walmart gift cards. I want to go ahead and kind of shift a little bit and ask a question. Thank you, Allison, for asking a question. It was similar to what I was going to ask, which is, as we focus on moving forward within our country, why do you think it is important to keep history alive, as well as your story, for future generations? And that could be for anyone. Why do you think it's important to keep that story alive?
I believe that if you don't talk or speak on history, the good, the bad, then it will repeat itself. So I believe that we have to talk to our kids, and I talk to my family even when they don't listen to me. I follow them into the other room. I sit by them while they're on their phones, and I tell them what I think that they need to hear. And some people say, well, they're not listening to you. Well, if you take the time to speak to someone, they'll listen, even though they may not act like they're listening, but they'll never hear you if you don't talk to them. So I believe that you gotta talk about it, or it will repeat itself.
Absolutely. Ms. Hammond, you're on mute.
There we go. I love that song from Hamilton, who lives, who dies, who tells your story. And I just think, what story do you want told about yourself and your family and your traditions? Those traditions are so important, and that is our heritage, because those stories and those traditions, that becomes the history. That's the history that will shape our community as we move forward. I really loved Billy's thoughts in this book about the Delta, when she says this place is in her blood, and her blood is the land, and the land is hers. this is us. This is who we are. When I speak to students, I always urge them to own Paducah, make it their own. I always tell them one day someone's going to yell down the hallway and say, "Hey, Paducah," and you're going to realize that they're talking to you. But this place is our identity, and we've got to shape it what we want it to be. And now is the time. We're in the place where we can make a difference, all of us together. I love that we're here talking like this, and I wish we had twice as much time to involve all of the people that are leaving comments.
Thank you. JW.
There you go.
Let me say this, that the fact that the short answer to that is the fact that if we don't understand and read our history, then we will go backwards, and we sure don't want to go backwards. But sometimes African Americans have a problem, and white Americans have a problem with this too. We've always heard the philosophy as young folks is the fact that this country is built on the blacks of African Americans. Well, if you read your history, you will find out that that is a very true story. And I always use the philosophy, can you imagine owning a Walmart and never paying your help? Is what a good example of that is. Can you imagine how rich you would be? Well, that's exactly the way it was in this country, is the fact that they built, even the White House was built by, or the Capitol, and a lot of these institutions, these schools, a lot of it was built by free labor is what it amounts to. So if you can imagine doing anything and not having to pay no help, that's one of the biggest expenses if you're in business, and not paying any of your help. So that's the reason why that if you read your history, you'll find out it's a true story that this country was built on the backs of African Americans.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is very important as we talk about Black history and the importance of the Black community, and why your perspectives matter and why they need to be heard, as well as all of our viewers. And speaking of viewers, we have some more questions from our community. Just want to bring those in. Tammy, what do you have for us?
Actually, we have something from our president, Dr. Anton Reese, and he tells us this is a fantastic panel discussion. What suggestions do our panelists have about preserving our history and getting the younger generation more engaged and active in our community?
And can I go ahead on that one?
Sam?
Oh yeah. I think going off what Ms. Hurd said again is definitely telling the whole story. And I know just from a personal experience, my family, I'm finding out stuff almost every day, it seems like. But if you're willing to share those family secrets, the stories that might not make you look good, but the real stories is going to resonate with, I mean, not only your own family, but people. I mean, people tell those real stories, it'll connect them and with you, and they'll be more engaged and be more willing to listen. But if it's cherry picked information with a ulterior motive, I think it turns people off sometimes. Because I know when I hear those real stories of my family with guns involved and things like that, once I'm gonna listen to everything, So that's just my 2 cents on that.
We had another community question.
Yes, and please forgive me if I mispronounce anything. Malafia Sante writes on the concept of nomo, creating a shared reality among African peoples. Can anyone speak to oral history or shared experiences across diaspora to show our commonality, offer a Pan-Africanist perspective?
So can anyone speak to oral history or shared experience across the diaspora to show our commonality, offer a Pan-Africanist perspective? Can anyone share in this importance? JW?
When I think about something like that, first of all, we were good musicians, African Americans was. Then we were good athletes. Even it goes back to even racing horses. We were good at that. We were good at basketball, football. But then all of a sudden we find out that we can do anything and everything that anybody else can do. We can be doctors and lawyers, and you know, a good example, and I don't take it negative, but the reason why that I was for Kansas City this past weekend is because for a long time they told African Americans we could play any position, but we couldn't play quarterback. These are the type of situations. And then for a long time, and I never would have dreamed in my lifetime that I would have seen an African American president. But not only have we seen an African American president, we got a African American vice president. So what I'm saying is, we as leaders, we're gonna have to continue to tell our children that the fact that you can do anything that anybody else can do as long as you put your mind and heart and soul to it.
That's what my dad told me. You're right.
But oral history is important.
Okay, we must continue to teach our students just what he said, all of those things. But also, I saw the commonalities. The commonalities are also, we all want the same things. We all want our children to grow up and to be able to do the things that they want to do. We all want to live where we want to live. We all want to feel like we're being treated the same way when we go and apply for a job. We all want to feel like we can drive our car without anybody bothering us when we're driving. We all want the same things. So the commonalities, we all want the same things.
Absolutely. Tammy, did you have another question?
I'm looking, they're coming in pretty quickly. They're mostly just making comments about the things that the panelists are commenting about. So,
well, while you read through those, JW, just really quick here before we move on. JW, you can go ahead and add your last comment.
Miss Hurt was right on point. Is the fact that a lot of times they will. In other words, we don't want nobody. We as African Americans don't want nobody to give us anything. We want to be able to work for whatever we get. But at least give me the opportunity to be what I want to be and do whatever I want to do. How many times have we heard that question? What do you want? What do you want in life? Well, I want the same thing you want. I want me to have a nice house, a nice car, have a good place for my kids to get a good education. We don't want nothing no different than anybody else. We just want what you want, in a way of speaking. That's it.
Well, I appreciate it. Now, the great thing is the conversation is so good. The discussion is amazing. I appreciate everyone tuning in. I just received word that we can continue to keep this conversation going a little bit more than what we were going to. So instead of ending at 7, we're going to keep it going. Thank you so much. I am so happy that we are allowed to extend this conversation and dig a little more into race relations and social injustice and your personal experiences. Thank you so much. And thank you, viewers at home, who are asking these really good questions so that we can have and touch on difficult conversations that need to be discussed. Thank you so much. I do want to go ahead and jump back to another question that we had earlier. Samuel, I know that you had shared your experience about your perspective as far as, what you learned from your grandparents and, just overall taking in those stories. Anyone else on the panel have learned something from their family that has stuck with you, that you have carried on and taught other people about, that you just hold dear to you?
If I could say something, I would have to speak of my mother and my grandmother. They were just wonderful, strong ladies, and they were all about helping people. And one of the stories that I remember as a child, one of the ministers at the church that we attended, wife had gotten sick and he needed money, and he asked for the money, and the deacons, it was just, he was told no, that he couldn't have the money. And so she was in such dire straits, he took the money and left a note, an IOU. And the following Sunday, we come to church, there's a meeting, uh, it was almost like ladies weren't supposed to be a part of the conversation, but my mother and grandmother got up, trying to humanize what this man was doing. His wife was dying. He needed the money to get the medicine. Let's be good. Well, they kicked the man out. Long story short, and my grandmother and mother built a church where this man could come. They found out how many cinder blocks they would need to build a church, and they sold pies, barbecues, had a number of things, and they got a church built. This man came there, was a minister for many years. His wife attended. And to this very day, I always think of how passionate and how strong and how willful my mother and grandmother were. And I try to instill that in my children, to let them know that if there's something that you want to do, if you just believe in the Lord first and in yourself, then you could get it done.
Absolutely, because one of you have a family member that has definitely had the chance to break some barriers here in Paducah as well, right, Ms. Dobson?
Well, yeah, I'm proud to say.
Well, share, so everyone knows. Be proud, mother.
Okay, she'll get on to me because she's always like, "You always saying that, Mama." But my daughter is the first African American female police officer, and I'm so proud of her, and I'm proud of the difference that she makes. Because if you don't see yourself somewhere, how can you be there? One more comment. I was speaking with, I found out that a gentleman in my community when I was a little girl might be the first African American in this area, general area, West Kentucky, who was the first elected official. Well, I tried to do some research, trying to find out if he was or not. And I spoke with a person that said to me, well, the job was a thankless job anyway. They probably gave it to him, just a job. But what that person didn't understand, because he wasn't Black, that because this man was an elected official, then that meant that I could, if I had put my heart there, then I could have been an elected official there. But since this man had died in 1984, there has not been another African American person in that community to run for office. And it didn't mean anything to the person I was talking to about. It was just shrugged off. It was a little thing, but it's a big thing to us because we had not had that level playing field. And I think when I think about the book, I think that's why Billy was so set on getting to the truth for her family, not just for herself, but for her family, her whole family. Her grandmother went to her grave not knowing actually how her son had died, because people had said he was a drunk. he committed suicide, when in fact he did not. So if there was a little girl in that community that had a story that she wanted to go after, Billy was that factor that could, inspire someone to do something more. Okay, I'm through.
That's okay. Well, because we have a little bit more time, I do want to kind of shift towards our closing because I don't want to run out of time. But I do want to ask this question for all of our panelists here this evening. What are some words of wisdom that you would actually give our viewers in regards to oral history or Black history or just the overall family perspective?
If no one else is jumping in, I will.
Go for it.
I guess be a true citizen of your community, know your neighbors, ask some questions about the past. I learned some things from our San Antonio, another UNESCO creative city, and we talked about ask these folks, what did you remember having for dinner? Did you grow your vegetables? Was it a family recipe? What was your favorite music? When you sat on the front porch, what did you see when you looked out into the neighborhood? What did it smell like? What did you hear? What games did the kids play? Those memories are just, I wish I'd asked my own mother these very questions. And but those memories need to be given a nudge, and we need to do it, all of us individually.
Yeah, absolutely. Oral history
And you
is
can't
so
take it for granted.
Yeah, you definitely can't take it for granted. It's
Mm-mm.
interesting because I come from a pretty large family, and I love hearing about my mother and her sisters, and my father and their large family, brother and sisters, hearing about what life was like for them. And when you're younger, it doesn't connect, it doesn't register that these are stories of historic times, what they experienced. And you want to keep that going. So, when you don't have things written down on paper, you have to find a way to record the memory. So how do you do that if you're not paying attention at the family reunion, or if you're not sitting around and listening to the elders speak? And it's just so important to record, remember, write down the history so it doesn't get lost. When we talk about our ancestors and the Africans who were brought over here against their will, all their history, most of it was lost, and it wasn't something that could be written. And these are the things that we don't see in textbooks. So it's important that we translate the story so that the stories that are not told in the textbook continue to be heard. So I appreciate that. JW.
One of the things that I wanted to make sure for is words of wisdom. In other words, like what you was just talking about, I come from a very large family also. In fact, I had to come from a family of 13. Of course, that was including mother and father. But I can remember my dad worked at a regular job, and then he worked at a nightclub at night. So he took him 2 jobs. But the part that I remember also is the fact that when it come time to pay bills, I mean, everything had to check out to the penny. Otherwise, daddy would be upset in a way of speaking. But because mama would slip and do this and slip and do that for us, more or less. But I wanted to always take the attitude that I didn't want to have to live that way. So to all the listeners out there, I want you to take the attitude that regardless, the way I was taught is the fact that even if you're a ditch digger, be the best ditch digger that you can be. And then I hear people talk about the fact that, I only make $5 or $10 an hour. But what you do is, it's been a lot of times where that person might have started out as the sack boy, but then he's owning the company, or he's the manager of the company. So work, whatever you do, work hard. But don't turn your head to those situations. Whereas when Beretta Hurt call on you to and Snack call on you to try to help on a particular situation for unequal opportunity, we want to be out there and help out on that also, because of the fact that I don't, in other words, and don't take the attitude that you're doing it for yourself. Really, what you're doing it for yourself, but you're also helping somebody else come along also, and you got to do good because of the fact that you ride on the back of others. So we got to teach you good, and I don't care, and don't never let nobody tell you that anything it's not black and white. It's black and white working together. In other words, we still got to work together as one.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Tammy, looks like we have some questions from the community before we wrap up this evening. Let's take those in, Tammy.
We have one from Evan Dubois. How can WKCTC support more conversations like this and be an ally to the community?
That's a great one.
Just have more of these talks.
I agree
What
with
we
that.
need to do is continue to have more oral history.
Yeah.
Okay, we got to think about that. Let's have an oral history series and have more panelists and discussions, and maybe just have more of these discussions on and off campus to talk about these things. We can bring in other panelists from all over to talk about their experiences. I think it's great when we have panel discussions to talk about these types.
Because I think I agree totally with that. Actually, having more panel discussions and, like you're saying, having more discussions just in the community, period. Because there are so many different perspectives, and just even going to the Black experience, there's so many different nuances that come within the Black experiences. So hearing those individual stories to put together the whole picture would bring people together a lot more. So I think definitely having those conversations.
Thank you. JW.
But when you put your panel together, don't just pick all African Americans. That's one of the biggest problems that we have. A lot of times we teach in the choir. So you want to encourage your white friends to get involved in having these panel discussions also. Because if we we can't change the world by ourselves, but we as together, we can make a difference is all there is to it. But then again, also when you're around the water hydrant and at the golf course or bowling alleys or whatever, you don't want to chastise one of your white friends when they get out of line, but you want to let them know that, hey, that's not really the way to do it. You know, in other words, we can go much better in this world with a little love in our heart and believing in that man upstairs than because you know what was happening years ago. I mean, it was some group of people could go out and kill African American at night and go to church the next morning. I mean, we can't have those type of philosophies, you know.
I definitely got to say that was definitely important what JW just said, Mr. Cleary, about not chastising, but approaching it in a way like Ms. Hurt said at the very beginning. Approach it in a way that you want to be approached, because sometimes people have like the ignorance level is way up there, and it's like if they don't know, like you got to approach it like they're a child. And if you're looking for change, now if you're looking just to win an argument, that's a whole different thing. But like say, you got to approach it like you want to be approached. That's knowledge right there from both. That's the words of wisdom. I'm taking it from them together, and that, yeah.
And Tammy, did you have? Because we have to wrap up, so I just want to go ahead and take in a couple.
Just that one suggestion that's been coming up in the chat is you need to host a television show on our access channel, public access channel, about African American history, and maybe have some of the panelists here and others in the community. That's been coming up several times in the chat that you are doing such a great job, and they want you to host a television show.
Yes.
Ooh.
I'm okay with that. We will work on that. We'll talk about what we need to talk about later off this air. Once we get done, you just let me know. JW.
I just want to piggyback on what Hawk was talking about, is because of the fact that, in other words, believe it or not, it's a lot of white Americans out there that don't know any better. I mean, I know we take the attitude they should know better, but a lot of them don't know better, and that's when you can't chastise them. I still say that I've gained more friends, as what Robert Coben would say, you can get more friends with cream and sugar than you can with salt and pepper. And even going with the philosophy of Malcolm X to me is so important to Martin Luther King's program, because if Martin Luther King's program never would have worked. But what it did, it gave white Americans a choice whether I'm going to follow Malcolm X or follow Martin Luther King. And you know the rest of the story. That's all I got.
All right, Ms. Red, I know you're coming in here.
Okay, I think one of the major things that we can do, and I think there was an Allison Smith that asked this question, what can Paducah do? I think we can get to know our neighbors. We no longer know the people who live on the street with us.
So true.
And that was one of the things when I was growing up. If somebody died, everybody on the street contributed maybe a quarter or 50 cents, and that person had a flower. Now people can die next door to you, and you don't even know until you miss them that they're not there, that they're dead. We had one little lady on our street that would host all the females on one end of the street. She would host us on one Saturday morning for coffee. And it was just for us to get to know, to see each other and to know who we were. We don't do that anymore. And that was, you wouldn't have to chastise if people get to know. They'll know some of the things that they should do and they don't do and they will start doing, because my husband always tells me that I believe that man is basically good. And I do. I believe that
I
more
agree with
people
that.
are good than and if the good gets together, it can help turn the bad around. You know, I think sometimes, as you say, they don't know. Well, they need to be taught, because it's too late in this day and time for people not to know.
All right. Well, I need to go ahead and transition to wrapping us up. And I've appreciated everybody's comments, viewer participation. Nathan, I know a lot of our viewers would like to know more about their history and often face challenges when important information is not written. Nathan, do you have some oral history resources you can share for those who might be interested in learning more?
Yeah, I do. And you can see them on the screen here. Passtheword.ky.gov is a database where you can search for oral histories, and you'd be blown away at the amount of formal oral history recordings that you can find there. Also, the Kentucky Oral History Commission, if you're interested in more information about oral histories recorded in conjunction with the Kentucky Oral History Commission and Kentucky Historical Society. Below that, there's a Murray State Special Collections, their oral history collection. And then if you're interested in doing oral history recordings with your family or neighbors, you can find more about that at oralhistory.org. Below that is a link to the McCracken County Public Library's website. We've put out a Black History and Genealogy resource guide that can provide assistance for folks interested in researching their past or their neighbor's past. I think it's important to look at the book, The Gone Dead, and realize that there was a lot of research that had to be done for Billy to find out the information she needed. And you find that in one of the chapters where they go to the library and they do this research in the newspapers. And I just want to extend that the library is, if you want to talk to your neighbors and get to know people, the library is a great place to do that as well. Not just for resources, but please come visit us and we're happy to help you with your research.
Thank you so much, Nathan. Now, find out more about WKCTC's One Book Read of The Gone Dead by Chanel Benz at onebookread.com. If you would like to read the book, you can check it out in print or audio format from WKCT's Matheson Library. It's a popular book and copies get checked out pretty quickly. Yes, everybody's holding it up. We've all got it here. So check ahead by contacting the library at wklibrary@kctcs.edu or 270-534-3197. Nathan, tell us we can get the book at the McCracken County Public Library and the best way to contact the library.
You can contact the library at mclib.net that you see on the screen or at 270-442-2510. We have print copies. We also have digital copies on both Hoopla and Libby where you could download the audio or the ebook tonight. If you would like to, just visit our website and we could help you out with that.
Thank you. And you can also grab the book at Marshall County Public Library, Hardin and Benton locations. And of course, you can get a copy online. I do want to thank you so much, panelists, for sharing this intimate space with me. And thank you, viewers, for logging in and watching The Art of Oral History. You have helped create history this night. And I'm just so happy that you were able to bring your stories. I appreciate everyone at home and traveling and far and wide to be a part of this experience. I do want to just go ahead and, it's Black History Month. So we are learning about Black people all over who have contributed to the history, the makeup, as you stated, JW, the backs of Black people have helped build this country and or forced to build this country, I should say. And as you come across people during Black History Month, I want to shed a light on Dr. Darwin Troy Turner. He is the grandson of Charles Turner, who, if you don't know who that is, I encourage you to look him up. Dr. Charles Henry Turner is someone that is going to be important when it comes to zoology and science. But Dr. Darwin Turner is going to be a young man who actually graduated by the time he was 18, got his PhD by the time he was 25. He entered into school and finished with his bachelor's and master's. Like I said, Phi Beta Kappa. He has accomplished so much. And he was named University of Iowa Foundation Distinguished Professor of English in 1981. And one thing is he was able to contribute a lot of his stories about oral history. And I just want to share his thoughts on oral history as we conclude our segment from one of his presentations on March 3rd, 1990. He said, "I urge you to seek out the elders, open your ears and your tape recorders to them, preserve their memories in your own in the archives of Black organizations and non-Black historical societies. Collect your history from those who lived. Carry your history with you so that you will never forget who you are and where you have been." And that is just so important as you continue to learn and you encounter people. Ask them about their history. Ask them to share their stories. Record them, write them down, put it on social media, but keep the story going. I hope you have learned a great deal and continue the tradition of oral history and keep it alive in the community, amongst your family. You know, COVID has separated a lot of us and we're not able to sit down and love and hug on each other, but that does not stop you from sharing your stories, writing them down, and teaching others to teach others. So I encourage you to keep this going. I thank you so much for being here tonight. I know that you're probably waiting to find out who are our winners of the $50 Walmart gift cards, and I am waiting to receive those names.
All right, here we come. I think that Kathy is going to be posting those momentarily for us.
Okay.
And here we go. The winners of the gift card drawings are Antonio McFarland and Sheila Smith Anderson. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Please contact Kathy McCaney at kathy.mccaney@kctcs.edu to your prize.
Perfect. Congratulations to our winners. Just like I said, or as Tammy just said, just contact Kathy to schedule a time to pick up your gift card. If you or someone else would like to view this video, it's available anytime on the WKCTC Facebook page or YouTube channel to watch at your convenience. Once again, thank you all for joining us for Oral History Stories from the Community. I'm Stacey Watson, working at WKCTC. It's been great. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful and safe weekend.